So I want to talk about generational considerations because this is the first time that we have had 5 different generations in the marketplace. We have traditionalists, and although it's a very small percentage, and you'll see the percentage in a moment, 77 to 97 years old. They are in the market. And while they might not be in an organization you left or you're a part of or you'll be going to, they are in the marketplace. Boomers, 58 to 76 years old. Again, this is the big gap, but they're still in the market. Generation X, 42 to 57 years old. And then you've got millennials and or Generation Y. They are 22 to 42 years old. And then we have Generation Z. And we're going to learn about the characteristics of each of these generations in a moment. But up to the age of 21, they're in the market now. And finally, we've got the Alpha generation who will be entering the market soon. But that's the 6th one. So you've got traditionalists, boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Generation Z in the marketplace right now. So I have a question, and you can use the chat for this. Just pop your answer in the chat. What percentage of US adults age 55 and older do you think retired? They retired, not laid off, not terminated, they retired. What percentage of US adults do you think retired as of, let's just say the last quarter of 2021, late 2021? B, 30%, 30%, I see. Anyone else? 30%? B, C, C, B. Well, you will be shocked when I tell you that the answer is D, 50%. That is what has caused a talent gap in that boomer Xer area. But what I will tell you is that there is a need. There is a need for those folks to come back to the market. And why? For diversity of perspective, for historical and institutional knowledge, to teach the younger generations what it means to be loyal and committed, right? So we are needed. I will say we, because I'm one of them. We are needed in the market. So let's talk a little bit about generational collaboration here. As you can see, and as I said, traditionalists only make up 2% of the current US workforce, but they're still with us. And what does that mean? Is that we need to understand that different characteristics, historical events and characteristics shape each generation. And why do we need to understand that? Because we have to work together in the marketplace. And so we're going to go through the characteristics because I want you to see if you're dealing with someone, you're working on a team and you're dealing with someone, you're like, I wonder why they're saying that, or I wonder why they're doing that. It's probably because they're a product of another generation, right? So baby boomers, 25%. Generation X, 33%. Millennials, 35%. And then you've got Generation Z at 5%. Yes, we're needed. That's right. Some of us never left. You're absolutely right. So let's talk about traditionalists. Traditionalists are that 2% number that we talked about. The characteristics that shape them, and these are all stereotypes, by the way. Some people may be an exact, they might represent all of these characteristics, but some of them might straddle 2 different generations. Some may not, and some may be like, that's not me. That's, I'm not like that. So I'm just using these to show everyone that we are in a multi-generational workforce and we all work differently. But that's the beauty of diversity. So traditionalists were shaped by the Great Depression, World War II. They listened to the radio and they watched movies on reels. They are motivated by respect, recognition, and they believe in providing long-term value to organizations. They like to communicate by handwritten notes and personal touch. So if you're communicating with a traditionalist and you're trying to text or instant message or something else, they might not be comfortable with that. So it's important to understand how to communicate with each generation. They also prefer obedience over individualism. They believe that age equals seniority. And I see this all the time in workplaces where there's conflict sometimes. And they believe in advancing through the hierarchy. So when you hear someone say, where am I going to be in 3 months? Or where am I going to be in 6 months? Which happens to me all the time when I recruit. I think about other generations who say, oh, no, you'll get there when you deserve to get there. Let's move on. Baby boomers. 65% of baby boomers plan to work past the age of 65, either because they need to or they want to. But 10,000 baby boomers reach retirement every single day. They were shaped by the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, and Watergate. And they're motivated by company loyalty, teamwork, and duty. Their communication style is whatever's most efficient. They're okay with the phone and they're okay with face-to-face. And their worldview is that achievement comes after paying your dues. You pay your dues and then you get promoted, or then you achieve what's next. And here, employers need to understand that they need to provide baby boomers with specific goals and deadlines. Put them in mentor roles. That's what baby boomers are great for. We are great mentors, right? And offer coaching style feedback. And we will talk about coaching a little bit in a few moments. But coaching is not directing. Coaching is collaborating with employees to help them get to where they want to be. And you've got Generation X, flexible, informal, skeptical, and independent. And why? Because they were shaped by the AIDS epidemic, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the dot-com boom. So it's understanding those historical events that make them the reason why they are skeptical and independent. They're motivated by diversity. They want work-life balance. And they believe in their personal, professional interests rather than the company's interest. They, too, communicate however's most efficient. Phone calls and face-to-face are fine with them, too. And their worldview is that they favor diversity, but they're quick to move on, right? They're skeptical. They're quick to move on if their employer fails to meet their needs. And they're resistant to change at work if it affects their personal lives. So the advice to employers here is give Gen X immediate feedback. They want that feedback. They want to know how they're doing. Provide flexible work arrangements and work-life balance, and extend those opportunities for personal development. And I will say tuition reimbursement was a big thing several years ago. And it's, I believe, coming back in certain organizations, but it is an incentive to recruit and retain at least Generation Xers, and you'll see with the next generations.
Cindy,
By
just to
2028, yeah.
Cindy, don't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt, but I know that you're going to probably come back to this a little bit later, but somebody's posed a question. They're looking for a position after being disabled for 5 years. What is the best way to cover those 5 years? I know you're probably going to come back to it, but I just want to get that in there.
Thank you very much. So yes, I'm going to talk about resumes, gaps, and interviews. But what I will say just very briefly is that the landscape has changed. And I've been recruiting for 20 plus years. And while we used to look at, gaps in resumes and other things, people will ask the question, what have you been doing for the last 5 years? But it's not, first of all, you can't discriminate based on a disability. Okay. Second of all, people are not really looking at those things. We used to look at tenure and say, oh, this person's loyal. They've been with a company for 20 years. Do that sometimes now too, but it's not like it used to be. So the gaps and other things, it's understood that over the last several years, people have left jobs or had personal issues or had to leave the market specifically during the pandemic to care for themselves or a loved one or a friend or what have you. So most people are not even, that's not even, in my experience, a question that I may say, oh, what'd you do between this and this? And if you offer an explanation, I say okay. But it's not what it used to be. So we'll get to that. We'll get there.
Thanks.
About my children. So, okay. So by 2028, Generation Xers will outnumber baby boomers. So that means that Xers and millennials are leading the market as supervisors, directors, and people who are overseeing others, right? We've got a lot of millennials in the market now who already are managing, but Generation X will outnumber boomers by 2028. And so let's move on to millennials, or Generation Y. They got such a bad rap a few years ago when I was teaching generational differences. And some of them came to me after a presentation and said, these are really stereotypes and we get a really bad rap and some of us aren't like this. And, what was used with respect to millennials was everybody gets a trophy, not just the first place person, right? But again, I say that to say, remember that folks are shaped by these historical events. So millennials who were born between 81 and 2000, they were shaped by Columbine, 9/11, the internet. We sheltered them, right? They are motivated by responsibility, and this is the first time you're going to see this. The quality of their manager is very important, and unique work experiences. They want meaningful work experiences. And so people would say to me, Cindy, what is a meaningful work experience? You have to ask them. And most of them won't tell you unless they trust you. So again, it's about building relationships. I want to just share this stat with you because this is also, we just talked about this, that millennials will be leading the market. 75% of millennials, the global workforce will be made up of them by 2025. So this is the profile of 75% of the workforce in 2025. Just want you to keep that in mind. We can talk about this offline with respect to your counselor finding a job in your price range. We can talk about that offline. I could probably try and help you with that because I'm not sure that that's impossible. So communication style for millennials: instant messaging, text messages, and email. So remember, these are the people who are going to be leading us By 2025, 3/4 of the global workforce will be made up of them. They seek challenge, growth, development. They want to have fun at work, but they also want to have work-life balance. And they are likely to leave an organization if they don't like change. So the advice for employers here is get to know your employees personally, manage by results. And I remember a millennial saying to me, does it really matter if I'm here between 9 and 5 if I get my job done? Things are changing because that's not necessarily true any longer. Now, there are Fair Labor Standards Act issues with, non-exempt employees, but we won't get into that tonight. But millennials also want you to be flexible with them on their work assignments and their schedule. And they also want that immediate feedback. They want to know how they're doing. One last fact I want to share, and I don't think this is a surprise. Millennials ages 25 to 35 living at home with their parents, 15%. I don't know if you're surprised by that stat or not, but interesting stat. And then finally, Generation Z. Generation Z was born between 2001 and 2020. And they're entrepreneurial, they're progressive, they're less focused, and they're global. They care about social things. They really care about social causes. They were shaped by life after 9/11, the Great Recession, and they've had access to technology from a very young age. Gen Zers, 40% of them say they want to interact with their boss daily, not once, several times a day. They want that relationship, that personal relationship, mentorship, friendship, whatever you want to call it. They're motivated by diversity, individuality, and creativity. They self-identify as digital device addicts. They value independence and individuality, and they prefer to work with millennial managers. Now, that's not all of them. Again, remember, these are stereotypes, but they're innovative and they like to work with new technology. 84% of Generation Z, now remember, these are the up and coming 5% in the marketplace now. They want and expect for employers to provide informal and formal on the job and training outside. That's what they expect. So for employers, they should offer Gen Z opportunities to work on multiple projects at the same time, provide them with that work-life balance, and allow them to be self-directed and independent. They like the autonomy. So I'm saying this to say that each generation works differently and needs to be managed differently. So managers are being trained on this so that they understand the wants and needs of their teams.